The girl who vanished after prom night. The unsolved mystery of Maura Murray. The car sat crooked in the snow like a red toy dropped by a giant hand. Its nose was buried in a small ditch on a dark, quiet road. Steam rose from the hood and faded into the winter night. A few house lights blinked on. A man who drove a big bus pulled over and tried to help. He asked the young woman by the car if she was okay. She said she was fine. She said she had already called for help. Then he drove off to phone the police anyway, just to be safe. It took only a few minutes for help to come. But when the first officer's flashlight slid across the broken glass, the cold air, and the empty driver's seat, the road suddenly felt much bigger. The woman was gone. No crunch of feet in the snow showed where she went. No knock at any door. Her car was there. Her bag was there. She was not. How can a person be there 1 minute and vanish the next, on a quiet road in the middle of winter? The officer raised his light and listened. The woods answered with only the soft hiss of wind through bare branches and the slow whisper of falling flakes. Somewhere a dog barked. He called out and waited. No answer. He took a step toward the trees and stopped. Was she hiding? Was she hurt? And if she was hurt, where did she go in those few minutes before he arrived? Earlier that day, the sun had been bright but thin, like a coin pressed flat in the sky. The campus buzzed with winter routines, hats pulled low, backpacks snug on shoulders, people walking fast because the air nibbled at their cheeks. In a small dorm room, a 21-year-old nursing student named Maura folded sweaters and tucked them into a bag. She moved calmly, like someone packing for a short break. There was a quiet order to it. Clothes, toiletry kit, a few personal items. The bedspread was neat, the desk straight. She sent a short email to a PR. Professor. She let a boss know she would be away for a bit. She read a few directions she had printed, simple lines pointing north into the hills, toward a place where the sky is wide and the trees stand tall like old, thoughtful guards. People who knew her said Maura was bright, caring, and focused. She was a runner. She liked the feeling of cold air burning in her lungs and the steady rhythm of feet on pavement. She liked solving problems, the kind you can fix with listening, kindness, and careful hands, good skills for a nurse. But even strong people carry worries they don't show. School can be heavy, money can be tight. Some weeks feel like pushing a big stone up a hill over and over again. When she closed her dorm door, it clicked with a sound that felt hopeful. A small break, a drive, a little space to think. The highway stretched ahead like a gray ribbon. The car she drove, a small Saturn sedan, hummed along. The trees grew thicker the farther north she went, black and green against big piles of snow. Every so often she passed a gas station, a store, a sign that pointed toward a town with a simple name. The world outside the windshield moved like a slow movie. In the back seat, her bag lay quiet. In the front, the heater worked hard, and the radio played low. As afternoon slipped toward evening, the sky got that deep winter blue that happens just before night. Snowbanks stood higher along the edges of the road like soft walls. Houses were spread out, each with their own patch of land and a light in a window. The mountains in the distance looked like sleeping animals covered in white blankets. It was peaceful, the kind of quiet that feels safe and a little lonely at the same time. Then, sometime after dark, on a rural road in New Hampshire called Route 112, something changed. Maybe she misjudged a curve. Maybe the road was slick. Maybe a glance down at some thing in the car took her eyes off the lane. On winter roads, small seconds matter. The car slid. Tires hissed on ice. The Saturn kissed a snowbank, then bumped into a shallow ditch with a sigh and a little crunch. The airbag popped like a balloon, soft and sudden. The engine hissed. Hot met cold. The night swallowed the sound and gave back only stillness. A few houses stood nearby. In one of them, a woman looked out and saw the car. In another, a man finishing his route with a big bus saw the red shape near the snow and stopped to check. He asked if she was okay. She answered. She looked shaken, the way you do after a scare. But she was standing. She didn't seem to want any trouble. She said she had called roadside help, like ABA. The bus driver nodded. He had a simple, kind thought. She might be embarrassed, but she still needed someone to know. So he drove down the road, parked, and called the police. That was a careful choice. That was a caring choice. The night wasn't empty. A few cars passed on the road now and then. Lights swept over white fields and thin trees. Inside the red car, the interior light made a small yellow island. There were things a traveler might carry. Nothing that looked angry or wild, just the normal bits of life when you plan to be away a few days. Not far from the tailpipe, something odd stuck out like a tongue of cloth. A rag hung there, gray against the dark. Some people later said that was a trick to keep an old car from smoking. Others thought it looked strange. At the time, it was just one more odd, silent detail in a quiet place. The first officer arrived only a handful of minutes later. So few that you could count them on your fingers. His tires crunched on packed snow as he rolled up to the scene. His breath made fog when he stepped out. The beam of his flashlight drew a white path through the air. He expected to see a young woman rubbing her arms, maybe embarrassed or worried, but okay. He expected to give a ride, call a tow truck, fill out a form. Instead, his light found an empty driver's seat and a deployed airbag folding low, like a wilted flower. No one stood on the roadside learning the lesson of icy curves. No one waved him over. He called out into the night. His voice sounded too big for the stillness. Where do you look first when someone should be close, but isn't? He looked at the houses. One neighbor said she had seen the car and a person near it, and later another car on the road. Another neighbor had called too. He checked the snow around the car. There were marks from the crash and a few footprints, but winter is tricky. Snow is both a notebook and an eraser. Wind writes and then rewrites. Tire tracks blur. Steps fill in. If someone had taken a short walk, the snow might start to cover it. If someone had run, the prints might have spread out and vanished into dark. He shined his light toward the trees. The beam drew skinny bars on trunks and left longer shadows. The night wasn't deep wilderness here. There were homes and porches and mailboxes. But the woods nearby were real woods, cold, uneven, full of hidden holes and stiff bushes. If a person had gone that way, they might trip or twist an ankle. They might sit down to rest and get too cold, too fast. It was the kind of night that asked you to be careful and answer quickly. He checked the car again. Inside, he saw a few items a traveler might need, and a few items a traveler might not want to leave behind. A map, a book, a small box. Later, other people would add up those items and ask many questions. Why these things? Why this road? Where was she going exactly? But in the first minutes, the questions were simpler and louder. Where is she? Is she okay? Soon more help arrived, more lights, more beams of white crossing the snow, voices on radios, names, short sentences, plans. The officer spoke to the bus driver who had stopped earlier. He spoke to the neighbor who had called. He looked down the road in both directions and pictured a young woman choosing left or right, fast or slow, road or trees. He pictured a car stopping. He pictured the sky spilling new flakes that would cover old clues. Think of how one choice changes everything. The driver chooses to stop. The neighbor chooses to call. The officer chooses to check the woods. A person chooses to say, "I'm fine," and then chooses to go somewhere. Each choice is a small door that opens into another room, and on a winter night, doors can be hard to find again. As the search grew, the night seemed to lean in and listen. The road was not busy, but it wasn't empty either. A few cars passed and slowed. The drivers looked out, wondering what had happened. A tow truck was called for the red Saturn. People checked the inside carefully. No driver's license left on the seat, no phone sitting in the cup holder, no note that said, "Be right back." Just the quiet mess that follows any scare. A powdery coating from the airbag, a smell of hot engine, and the steady cold that walks into every open door in winter. Word traveled fast in small places. Someone called someone, who called someone else. The story shrank and grew as it passed from ear to ear. "Small crash," one person said. "She walked away," another replied. "But then, where did she go?" a third asked. The question had a hook in it. It caught people's attention. Even without faces or names, a missing person on a dark road makes the mind spin like a compass looking for north. By late evening, the sky was a soft black lid, and the road looked like a pale ribbon laid across a dark table. A scent dog was brought to the scene. Its nose dipped and lifted like a hand reading Braille. The handler watched the dog's body, the way a sailor watches the wind in a sail. Small movements meant messages. The dog moved east along the road, then stopped, then circled. The handler lifted a hand. The watching officers quieted. The dog turned toward the middle of the road, as if saying the trail led right to the edge of the pavement, and then simply stopped, like a sentence without a last word. What do you do when a trail you can see ends at a place where you cannot? You look farther, you ask again, you widen the circle, you search both ways, you knock on doors, you shine lights into the dark, you step carefully and call softly and hope for an answer. The cold takes bites out of your cheeks and fingers, and the night seems to say, "Hurry." While the dog worked, an officer looked back at the red Saturn and that odd bit of cloth in the tailpipe. He bent down, touched it, then let it go. He didn't make a face. He didn't decide its meaning. He just saw it and said its name out loud to the air, like he wanted the night to remember it too. "Rag," he said. Then he stood up and kept scanning the edge of the road, slow and patient, as if the dark might give something back if he showed enough respect. In one of the nearby houses, a porch light burned. Inside, a clock ticked softly in a kitchen. A mug sat half full of tea, going cold. The neighbor watched from behind a curtain and felt that strange blend of fear and hope you get when help is here, but answers are not. She tried to put herself in the young woman's shoes. After a scare like that, would she be knocking on a door? Would she be hiding in the tree line, not wanting more trouble? Would she be sitting down somewhere, shaking, telling herself to breathe, to think, to wait for morning? The hours from night into late night have their own look and feel. The air grows sharper. The quiet gets heavier. The edges of things blur a little, as if the world is holding its breath. The team made their plan. Check yards, check porches, check the road both directions, check nearby side streets, keep notes tight and clear. Their radio voices stayed short. Their flashlights painted the snow again and again, searching for a line of prints or a dropped glove or any tiny sign that points like an arrow. Somewhere far away, on a phone that would soon fill with messages, family members were being reached. Hearts jumped awake, voices tangled with shock. She crashed? Is she hurt? Where is she now? The not knowing was a big, loud thing that pushed into every room it touched, like cold air entering when a door is opened wide. People got in cars. People prayed. People tried to stay calm and make smart choices, because smart choices build bridges over scary rivers. Back on Route 112, as midnight approached, the scene kept its quiet rhythm. Search, pause, think, search again. The tow truck winch whined and pulled the red Saturn a little straighter. Snow squeaked under boots. A pencil wrote small notes that would later be read again and again, each word turned over like a pebble in a hand. The officer who had arrived first walked the same 20 yards for the 5th time, because sometimes the 5th time shows what the first time missed. Then the dog lifted its nose, pulled the leash, and stood at the center line of the road, stiff and sure, and would go no farther. The handler looked up with eyes that asked a question he didn't want to ask out loud. If a trail leads to the road and stops, could it mean a car stopped here too? Could it mean someone opened a door, and the night swallowed the answer? The wind curled around the edges of houses and touched the tops of the pines. Somewhere, far down the road, a single headlight turned and disappeared. The officer's radio crackled with a new voice, hurried and tight. "We've got something. Fresh footprints by the old maple. Small, spaced like someone was moving fast. Then they break off at the shoulder." The words hung in the air for a second, bright and sharp, like a spark from flint. And just as the team turned, as lights swung, as the careful plan folded